Tuesday Fenway Rundown. Chris Cotillo here in the home office in Massachusetts. Sean McAdam on the road out in Anaheim, California. We were like ships in the night on Friday, overlapping in San Francisco for just a few hours as I took my beautiful red eye home. Let me tell you, folks, if you're on a red eye and it's a 6 hour flight, let's keep the shoes and socks on and not put the feet out in the aisle
Nope,
the entire
nope,
time.
nope, nope. If you are on a 20-minute puddle jumper, keep the socks and shoes on. The duration of the flight is immaterial to this question. Anybody taking their socks off needs to be let off the plane in handcuffs.
It was tough.
What's happened? What has happened to us as a society that
Yeah.
people think that's acceptable public behavior?
I had my two longest flights home from road series this year have been from Texas and then obviously opening week in now San Francisco. So 4 hours, five and a half. And before we left the ground, I always get the aisle seat. The person across the aisle was completely de-shoed and de-socked by the time we were in the air, both
I
times.
don't put up with that. No,
Well, what
we're
do you say?
and
What do you say?
knock it off. Put your shoes back on.
I don't know.
I
It's
get
just
I am not one for public confrontations, but that one would draw me in.
it's the third time might be the strike. So if you're a listener and you see me, which very, very rare, small chance of that on a plane, I'm going to be on high alert for socks and shoes coming off. I'll tell you that. Anyway, the
And
Red
know that
Sox are on
we will excoriate you on the next
the.
podcast if we see
That's
you
right.
doing this.
So I get home. You covered the last two games of San Francisco. Went down the coast to Anaheim, where you are now. Red Sox lose again, 9-5 last night. It was ugly. Walker Buehler. They don't call him strike thrower Buehler. Am I right, Sean? Uh,
That's correct, Chris.
yeah, so he obviously did not have a very, very good outing. In fact, he had a terrible one. His ERA well over 6, and I think it's, time to start talking about his future in the rotation. We'll get into that. Just overall thoughts from, the last 4 days from afar, and I did catch the first couple innings of the first Giants game. As I said the other night, it was a guarantee, an immortal lock that Devers would hit a big homer against the Red Sox. That, of course, happened. I think, the big story, not to steal your thunder on games you're covering, is just the sloppy play and the bad baseball coming back.
Yeah, and that certainly was the case up in San Francisco, where they won one out of three, certainly should have won two out of three, and conceivably could have swept the Giants had they played better baseball. Eight unearned runs in three games against San Francisco. You're asking for trouble if you give up eight unearned runs against the White Sox or the Colorado Rockies. If you're doing it against a team better than 10 games over 500, it is a absolute guarantee that you're going to be in big trouble. And that's what happened to the Red Sox up at Oracle Park. Uh, Whatever their struggles have been in recent weeks, they had cleaned up the defense quite a bit. We didn't have a lot of those games where they were making multiple errors and stupid fundamental mistakes, but it came roaring back with a vengeance at Oracle Park and cost them in a big way. As I said, it was not much of a stretch to see them taking all three of those games. But they gave up unearned runs in all of them, including a staggering five unearned runs on Sunday. That's your margin of victory right there. You lose 9-5, but five of the nine runs the opponents score are gift wrapped from the Red Sox because of sloppy play. Monday was obviously different here in Anaheim. That was all about Walker Buehler being gifted a 3-0 lead before he takes the mound. First pitch, Zach Neto takes him deep, 3-1, and then it unraveled from there with four walks, two with the bases loaded, another two hit batsmen, one with the bases loaded. He just could not find the strike zone with the proverbial map and compass in the first inning. It got a little better after that. And I guess to his credit, he stuck around for 4 innings through 94 pitches, didn't have them get into the bullpen as early as they could have, but still required 5 innings and 15 outs from the bullpen. And, no way to win, obviously, when your starting pitcher cannot throw the ball over the plate.
Yeah, well, I mean, that has been kind of a constant theme of, guys in the rotation taking a step forward, taking a step back. We've talked about that a lot, and I think it's glaring with Bueller. At this point, highest ERA of any pitcher with at least 50 innings in the American League. The blow-ups, obviously there was a one in the Bronx that was very bad. Seattle the other night, the grand slam to Raleigh, and now that's two on this trip. For now, I think his rotation spot, it seems like, is safe for one more turn, but
For
it's
for
getting
lack of alternatives, really.
right, but it's about to get crowded. Kyle
Yep.
Harrison, with that service time date around July 4th. Hunter Dobbins doesn't seem like he's going to be out long. Tanner Houck, obviously, you don't know what you're going to get out of him because he was worse than this when he was pitching, but has two more rehab outings in Scranton, one tonight, one Sunday, and then could be back. Richard Fitz is up. Will pitch tomorrow. I just feel like at a certain point, maybe you put Bueller in the bullpen, see if he can help you there as a long man to get right. That's not what he wants. Is he's trying to, I mean, kind of the cat's out of the bag, right? The horse has left the barn on the establishing value in a 1 year big money pillow deal, but still, every outing is going to matter. I still
Well,
think,
I would remind you though that he established his value and got $21 million based on his
right,
October showing. He was not very good during last regular
right. He
season.
wasn't this bad though.
Pardon me?
He wasn't this bad.
Well, until last night, he was about the same. He had a mid
Yeah,
five ERA, and then he uh, kind of created a market for himself by how well he pitched in October, including a game 3 start and win in Yankee Stadium, and then getting the final outs in game 5 for the Dodgers. And that, I think, gave people some hope that, okay, he wasn't very good over the first 5+ months, but he's figured some things out. He's on the upswing. The Red Sox thought that and signed him to a $21 million deal. So there's still time, not that this is of the utmost concern for Red Sox fans or even the Red Sox.
right.
There's still time for him to rebuild his value with a better second half and a strong showing. But right now, this team is down to 500 again, threatening to go under it, has a losing record on this road trip that they needed to have a winning record on. I mean, they now need to win the final two here, excuse me, to come home 5-4. But yeah, if he takes another start, which would be what, over the weekend against Toronto, it will be by default and for lack of any other options.
Right. And again, Harrison, Hauk, um, and Dobbins all could re-enter the mix here in a couple weeks. But if you look at it, people, you can talk about a billion things that have gotten you to, as we record this, the last day of the first half. Congratulations. We made it, everyone. 40 and 40 at an underperforming team. You can look at, spotty offense. Obviously, the trade of Devers is a massive, massive storyline that I think we've covered as much as you possibly can over the last week. That's, not the reason they're 500. They've had him on the team for most of those games. Injuries have played a role. Bullpen has been up and down. Situational offense, defense. Like again, I point to the number one factor in this in the whole year is Tanner Houck has an 8 ERA. Walker Buehler has a 6. Giolito has been up and down, and you've been trying to piece it together behind Crochet the entire time. That I think still remains the number one reason why they are where
Yep.
they are.
I would not disagree. I mean, they certainly have, although a very close second coming up on the rail is the defense and
Yeah.
the number of earned runs they've given away. 48 unearned runs. I don't think there were any last night. They were too busy handing runs via walk or hit
Though if you
batsmen.
if you walk a guy with the bases loaded or you hit a
Yeah,
guy with
that
a
should
pitch, that should
almost
count.
count. I
Yeah.
agree. But 48 unearned runs, better than a half run of unearned run, averaging more than a half unearned run a game is a recipe for disaster. As we said, it likely cost them at least one, if not two wins up in San Francisco. And it's been an issue that they haven't been able to fix. I mean, you've got a line, nobody is confusing Romy Gonzalez with Bill Mazeroski at second base. But when it's a line
What a
drive,
timely reference.
Pardon me?
What a timely reference.
I'm sorry. I know I'm not allowed to bring up players who were born before, who played before you were born. So there'll
Or
be
my
no talk
parents
of
were born.
Yaz or anybody else on this show because
Mike?
that might that might offend your delicate Gen Z
It's millennial.
sensibility.
Go ahead.
Oh, was I interrupted or
No, just
anything?
go ahead. You're fine.
Okay. So anyway, not a hard play for Romy Gonzalez, a line drive kind of head high right into his glove that somehow gets through and opens the floodgates in San Francisco. Stuff like that's inexplicable. They're not challenging plays. They're often routine plays that should be made and aren't, and they pile up and they cost this team. I mean, I would say conservatively, poor defensive play has cost this team literally a half dozen to 10 games this year. I mean, they
Right.
could be 10 games over 500 if they could catch the ball, and they haven't, and they're not.
Nap LaJoy would have had it, tell you that.
Funny.
But yes, obviously that has been kind of
It's
a
pronounced
theme and
Lajway, by the way.
whatever. The
Hall of Famer.
I
Why would you know him?
yeah, whatever.
New England
The
roots. Why would you know him?
Cora's frustration over this has lasted years and years and years, and I just like I don't understand how they haven't fixed it yet, despite all of the things that they have tried, firing infield coaches, firing Cora's friends, from Fables to Andy Fox to everything they've done. It just doesn't get better. At the end of the day, it's a talent issue, and I think the way to fix this is as soon as Bregman's back, you move Meyer to second. He's going to be a sound fielder over there. I think there's no way he won't be. He picked up third base, which is a harder position. You move him to second. There's some people that want Marcelo to play short and Story to play second. I would go with Marcelo at second,
Yep.
just see how it looks and ride with that for as long as you can this summer.
Yeah, I mean that's been of the of what we've seen of Anthony and Meyer, and there have been spurts offensively. Anthony's been better, drawing walks the last couple of games, making better contact. But by far, the most impressive thing of the two of them is how Meyer has taken to third base and played it just about flawlessly. His instincts are great on the field. He's got an internal clock that's working. He doesn't panic. I was impressed with one of the games in San Francisco where he took a tough backhand shot that carried him into foul territory and then had, I thought, the good instincts to eat the ball. He didn't try to force a ball as he was moving away, throwing across his body, risk a throwing error that could have advanced two base runners. He just realized he wasn't going to get the guy at first and held on to the ball. Not many young players have that capability and that ability to react as he did. I've been tremendously impressed by how he's taken a third. And I agree with you. I think he's going to be very good at second, but I would leave Trevor Story there too. At best, Trevor Story is now a league average shortstop. He's right around neutral on defensive run saved, so you can live with that. And I think asking him to switch and then upsetting the infield alignment is not worth it. If they have Bregman, Story, and Meyer going third, short, and second, I think the infield defense upgrades considerably.
Yeah, or Alex Cora can finally get his wish. They can keep Meyer at third, and they could turn Alex Bregman into everybody now a Gold Glove second baseman. Which Rafi's camp was, ooh, interesting. That would be great. But yes, the defense continues to be an issue. Situational hitting, and then dumb base running has also come into play the last few days in a lot of ways. And the Alex Cora going out and arguing, I think, has overshadowed really dumb decision making on the
Mhm.
bases in clutch spots. And so when there's the fire and brimstone and Cora going out and screaming at the umpire, getting tossed 2 days in a row, you don't often see. He's not a guy that gets run that often. The story and no, obviously no knock on you with, but the headline on the story that you did was Alex Cora ejected. Here's the explanation because that's something fans are always interested in. If Alex Cora was not ejected, the story would be more of why the hell are the Red Sox running in circles around the base paths? I know
Yeah,
that's been
and both
addressed, but it's been Duran and it's been bad.
both ejections centered around One was a curious decision, the other was idiotic.
Yeah.
One where he tried to stretch into a double in San Francisco is not something you should be doing. I think 3 runs down at the time. It's just the risk reward is not there. Stay at first. You want to steal second because you see something. That's one thing. We can argue that he beat the throw there and it was his misfortune to slide off the bag. You could even argue that it looked like he got his fingertip back on the side of the bag and should have been safe upon review, but it
I
shouldn't
think
have gotten to that
no one's
point.
brought this up. I think there was a string dangling off the glove that was touching his finger. I don't know if that counts or not.
I don't either.
Who
But
cares?
the play Monday night was indefensible. You're at second base with no out. There is a ball hit to shortstop right in front of you, and
Almost
you
hits
think
you.
you're, pardon me?
Almost hit him.
Right. And you think that's a good time to try to advance to third and take an extra 90 feet. And then it just snowballed because he gets caught in a rundown. Abraham Toro is seeing the ball go back and forth, figures, well, I'll make up for it. I'll get into scoring position at second, and he's out. I mean, the foolishness on the bases is has reached epidemic proportions.
And I have covered so many games sitting right next to you before that I have, or I was during that moment. Like I could hear you singing the circus song that you often sing in those types of moments that prompted my tweet of what a circus. Like it was bad. And then, like obviously, Cora coming out part of the reason why he's pissed is because his team's doing this. Obviously, he takes it out on the Empire, but you have to figure he's going to be looking at it like, are you guys serious? And that one was terrible. I played Little League, middle school, and freshman year of high school, and I can tell you one of the great rules: if the ball's in front of you while you're in second base, you hold up. And it's
Yep.
just, I think, a culture of trying to force it. One thing I really liked that they did last night was the back-to-back bunts. That came out of nowhere. That would have been a big story if they had won the game, if they had gotten that run home. Of course, Story strikes out there in a big spot, but and Anthony
Well,
kind of
let's back up though. Before Story strikes out,
yeah.
there was the curious decision. And look, we know by then Alex Cora had been ejected from the game, but we
Hmm.
also know, wink, wink, that there's communication between the clubhouse and the
Excuse me?
dugout, and that he's deciding what they're doing. Why not hit Ref Snyder there? There's a guy
Yeah.
with 1,000 OPS against lefties. You had talked about protecting Anthony and Meyer from some tough lefties. You've got, uh, I think it was Detmers on the mound,
Hmm.
and an opportunity to, get a base hit and take the lead in what was then a tie game. And Anthony was overmatched in that matchup.
Yeah.
Four
Well,
pitches.
I mean, I know how you feel about this. Sorry to cut you off, but like fans, I think this is one of those things where fans are going to try to have it both ways. How are they going to learn if they don't face lefties? And so they put him out there and,
Well, but he's being inconsistent. If
yeah.
he's sitting him sometimes and then letting him hit a very tough relief lefty with the
Hmm.
game on the line and the bases loaded.
Right. He's throwing
I get that
96.
argument that you've got to, let him sink or swim at some point. But if that's the case, he should be playing every day. That's
Right.
the consistency. You
Well, I
know,
think now
where
without Devers, it seems like he is going to play most days against lefties in some way. Marcelo's not.
Yeah, I suppose. But when you have a guy, as I said, that's got an almost 1,100 OPS against lefties this year, just had a big weekend in San Francisco, hit a home run against a lefty the other day. That
Right.
seemed like the perfect spot to tell Roman, hey, we're going with the platoon advantage here, and let's see what Ref Snyder can do. Instead, 4 pitch at bat to Anthony. He swings at 3 fastballs in the mid 90s and doesn't come close to hitting either of them, any of them.
Yeah. Well, it's, one of those that I think they're trying to get him at bats against lefties, but in that case, I do agree with you. Let's move on. Let's go a little forward thinking, as we often do on this show. Today is June 24th. As I said, today is the um, 81st game, so it will mark the official end of the first half. We got about 3 weeks till the All-Star break. Thursday will mark 5 weeks to until the trade deadline, which, as somebody who broke into this whole racket as trade deadliner on Twitter. I'm a traditionalist when it comes to this, and a July 31st trade deadline instead of this July 30th, July 28th, August 2nd BS is great. It just feels right. So you can write July 31st trade deadline. I'm happy it's back on that date. The Red Sox are off, which is in some ways good, in some ways bad. Whatever. We'll get there when we get there. There are 5 weeks left until that date. And the talk is obviously starting. There's not going to probably be a bigger trade made in baseball than the one we saw the other day between the Red Sox and the Giants. Craig Breslow said it means we're not waving the white flag. We have heard privately from Red Sox officials this is an outlier. We still want to contend. We still want to buy. At this point, though, they have a 25% chance of making the playoffs. According to Fangraphs, and if you look at the roster and if you look at, we'll get to in a second, ESPN's rankings, they do have some good trade candidates. So, we are going to do our annual tradition of debating the buy sell line now for 5 weeks in a row. Are they in? Are they out? Will they buy? Will they sell? Are they going to be aggressive? Are they not? We've seen different permutations the last few years. You have the weird let's buy and let's sell trade deadline of 2022 when Breslow decided to trade Vasquez, but also add Tommy Pham and get rid of McGuire, but also add Diekman in 2023. A very boring deadline where Kike Hernandez leaves the organization. And you have Luis Urias come in. That was a banner day. We were both in Seattle. That was a waste of budget. And then we have
I
the
didn't
20
agree with that one.
no, and in 2024 we have the really kind of measured buying by Breslow. That again, I stick by this. There's a lot of people that knock Breslow for different things. They harp on the sale trade, whatever. That deadline was horrible. And you see, I mean, not that these guys are world beaters, but, Zephyr John coming in last night, Lugo, some of these guys that have made the majors, they're already contributing more to the teams that they're on than any of the guys you got. Jansen, Sims, Garcia, Paxton. Like, it was a horrendous haul. And that's kind of what you get
Yeah,
for basically
I'd
shopping.
separate the Paxton deal from that because that was kind
Right.
of bad luck with the injury. I thought that was actually a good pickup for a back
Yeah.
end guy, but the two relievers were horrendous.
And so was
Andy
Jansen.
Jansen was a big flop.
Well, believe
For
it or
a
not.
guy who we saw in the clubhouse, the Netflix documentary, the expectation was he was going to become the everyday catcher, and
Right.
he was so I don't want to say inept, but he contributed so little offensively that didn't become the case.
And people don't know this, and this hasn't really been talked about or written about, but he actually became the first player ever to play for two teams in the same game, which I think we should have
Oh,
maybe
we should
covered a little
look
bit
into
more.
that.
Yeah. But this year we are back where we were. But the Red Sox have, I think, bigger names to potentially sell. We can get to the buy side of things, but on this day, right before we recorded, that Jeff Passan, Kylie McDaniel piece came out, and the number 1 and 2 trade candidates are both members of the Boston Red Sox. We talked a little bit about this before we started rolling. It's clear that they ranked based on talent and potential impact and not likelihood of being traded. That's very clear because they do give you the likelihoods. For the Red Sox, number 1 on the list of the top 50 trade candidates in baseball, Alex Bregman. Number 2, and they give him a 10% chance of being traded. Number 2 is Jarren Duran with a 25% chance of being traded. And then later, some down ballot options. Aroldis Chapman has a 35% chance, according to them. And Walker Buehler, this must have been written yesterday at some point, also with a 35% chance. I'd add 3 other names. If the Red Sox sell, there's not a lot of reason to keep these guys around as rentals. Justin Wilson, a rental who's been good. Rob Refsnyder, maybe you re-sign him as a clubhouse piece, but you could get something for him, which is, look at the year he's had. And also Giolito, I think, you do have him under contract next year, but whatever, you could shop him. Those are conversations for other days. I think if they do, obviously, if they sell, Chapman's gone. And if they could find somebody to pick up Bueller, fine. You're not going to get much for him in any case. We'll focus in on Bregman and Duran now. You think there's no chance of Bregman getting dealt. There's a lot of reasons around that, but the fact that he surfaced as number 1 still interesting, I think, to me.
Yeah, although, let's again remember that ESPN is saying a 10% chance, so a
Right.
90% chance he stays. I think that is probably accurate. I
Well,
couldn't.
what would you put the percentile on Rafi Devers getting traded 10 days ago?
True, true,
Yeah.
but there was enough history there that once we absorbed the shock, you could understand why they did it. They would have to just plummet over the next 4+ weeks. And I mean, like, get 10 games under 500, which they may be capable of doing. I just don't think they will. I think they're so thoroughly mediocre and just good enough to be bad or bad enough to be good, however you want to look at it. I think they'll be within shouting distance of 500, and that means they're going to try to buy.
And
So I
again,
see,
right now, a game and a half out of the wild
right.
card.
I see next to no chance of Bregman being dealt. I see there being a decent chance that Duran goes, and here's why. And by the way, trading Duran would not be a white flag, oh, we're in sell and auction mode. I think they would be looking for some immediate help. We know that there is already a crowded outfield situation. Um, Sedan Rafaela has, I think, earned his time and retains his spot in center field. Abreu is someone they don't want to give up, a Gold Glove winner who is still getting better offensively, and Roman Anthony. You can't have those four outfielders on the team and keep them all happy with playing time and or develop Anthony at the big league level.
Right.
So the notion of Duran being traded would not surprise me in the least. I don't think it would represent any sort of we're out, we're auctioning, there's a fire sale. I think it would be done sort of in advance of a trade that they would otherwise make in the off season with an eye toward trying to get better over the final 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, you're also like you're going to need to get playing time for Ref Snyder too against lefties, and you need him to take one of those three spots. So I guess he could DH, and then when Yoshida comes back, obviously that's another guy, and we haven't really gotten to that, but he is alive and well, and maybe coming back in the next couple weeks. I just like I don't I see some of the things people put on Twitter always dangerous on like what people think they could get for Duran. Yes, he has control, and yes, he had an unbelievable season last year. But I think the industry rightly looks at that as an outlier year, And I think
Yeah.
the industry also looks at it as a guy who nobody thinks is going to age well because of speed and all of that stuff. A guy who, we can talk about, he's been an average offensive player this
But
year.
let me interrupt for a sec. I don't think people care about that right now because you're
Yeah,
getting 3.5 years of
yeah,
control.
that's fine.
How big a risk he would be extending him in his early 30s is not a consideration for this deadline.
Right.
You're getting 3.5 years is now a lifetime of control in Major League Baseball. You worry about that much, much later.
But he hasn't been great offensively this year, and the defense has taken a huge step back. And I
Yep,
just
yep.
think, the Red Sox are going to want a premium for the player that they saw last year, and teams are going to be wanting to pay for the player they're seeing this year. And I think that makes it hard to do a deal. You wrote about, the kind of how they didn't really match up well with the Padres. I could see a lot of teams in that boat. And so, maybe, they take a lesser offer to get some big league pieces, some pitchers that could help. I don't know. I just like they don't have to force it. That's the other thing. I think that at a certain point with Rafi, it got like, all right, we got to get him out of here, and so we're gonna take, especially if someone takes on the whole deal, we're gonna move him. With Duran, is it the end of the world if they have somebody sitting on certain days for the final 2 months of this season and then figure it out in the off season? No. And I also think like as much as you can say, well, we're not waving the white flag and we're not selling. If they do this, and I'm not necessarily against them doing it, I see the reasons why, and I see the reasons why not. You are selling to your fan base, hey, we're still trying to contend, but remember the best two players on our team from last year who entered this season as our, non-Bregman category best two position players? Well, they're gone. And Bregman might
Yep.
walk at the end of the year. And so, you could talk about Crochet, you could talk about, some of these other guys that have stepped up and are here for a while and the excitement over Meyer and Anthony, but to have Devers and Duran, two homegrown guys who had, with Devers a long track record, with Duran an All-Star Game MVP, I think it's a tough message to sell to your fan base. I don't think they care about that, but I'm just saying, to think that both
Yeah,
of those
but
guys would
I
be
think the events of the last couple of weeks reinforce that they
right.
don't care about that.
Yeah.
There's a certain, and I don't necessarily mean this in a bad way, although it's hard to hear this word and not think it's some negative connotation. Craig Breslow can be ruthless. He will do what he thinks he needs to do, and he clearly is not one who is trying to take the pulse of the fan base before he makes a big move. He thought that they couldn't continue with Devers, that there were long-term consequences and bad culture influences, and he got the best deal he could. We've been over that. I think he would take the same approach with Duran, and we know that AJ Preller made that call, and that the Red Sox listened and found that they didn't match up. I think there'll be other teams. I'm sure others have already called. Look, he's a athletic outfielder who is in the prime of his career and who is controlled for 3.5 years. It doesn't mean that you're going to get an unbelievable package of return, but he does have value and he could be used to improve them, not just going forward, but for the rest of the season. The hard thing is going to be try to do a baseball trade at the deadline. And that's what this would be. Because we know in modern baseball at the trade deadline, 90 to 95% of these deals are established player nearing end of contract in exchange for prospects. That doesn't help the Red Sox. They have prospects. They need help at the major league level and they need it to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So the hardest part will not be getting some team to take a chance on Duran. It'll be getting a team to take a chance on Duran and giving up starting pitching or an everyday first baseman or some other role that they could fill here.
Right, and it wasn't a coincidence that the big get in the Devers trade, other than the money coming off the books, was Harrison, who can be a guy who you could slot into the majors. Obviously, he doesn't have that track record of amazing success, but it's not a single A guy, so that's important to note. That's the Fenway rundown for today. We'll be back later in the week. Sean has you covered in Anaheim tonight and tomorrow.